Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out the range with the FN FiveseveN pistol. This handgun was introduced in the late 1990s. It was intended for military and law enforcement sales only. The early guns are easily identified by their rather unconventional looking trigger guard, but those guns weren't really ever imported for civilian use. In around 2004, a version of the gun would become available to civilians in the United States, and the gun would go through some generational changes. And once again, FN has introduced a generational change in 2022. Now keep in mind, again, this gun has been on the market for over 20 years. And so FN had plenty of opportunities to evolve the pistol in case a competitor should enter the market space. And granted, it took a couple of decades for that to happen, but it did happen. And FN's response is in this box, and that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So fast forward to 2022, FN is fighting off competitors in the market space for 5.7 chambered pistols, 5.7x28. They can be a little bit confusing. The nomenclature and the cartridge will be both referred to as 5.7s. So this is the new pistol. This is the Mark III. And they did raise the price on the gun a little bit when they introduced it. Not uncommon, especially in today's economy. You get the FN soft case, and here's the pistol inside. So what did they change? Well, they didn't change the magazines. Those are the same. So for those of you that want to upgrade to this pistol, you don't have to worry about changing out your magazines. Now, of course, this gun is in flat dark earth, but it's also available in black. So one of the first things you're going to notice that jumps out at you is the gun now supports a red dot sight. The earlier designs did not, and of course this would be in direct response to competitive products that hit the market, the Ruger and the Rock, which both have the ability to accommodate a red dot sight. So here we have FN playing catch up, trying to do a Me Too red dot sight. Now what we found interesting about this is when we took the plate cover off to mount this RMR to it, there's a lot going on underneath the plate. And so it looks like FN just machined across, various parts and bits and pieces of the slide. And that wouldn't normally be a problem, but I don't know if you're not going to be able to see this on video, but I could see light under the mounting plate. And why is that a concern? Well, moisture can easily get through that gap. I can clearly see on the mounting plate into the mechanism, which is where the firing pin and other components are housed. And that would become a point of concern for me. You don't want moisture creeping into your trigger mechanism because that can cause failures to fire. And you don't typically take your RMR off to check and clean underneath to make sure things are good to go. So that is a point that I really dislike about their attempt at doing a red dot sight on the gun. Now you'll notice that they maintained the target sights, if you will, and they're really tall target sights. And I say they're target sights because the rear sight's adjustable for windage and elevation. They're 3-dot type sights, and the front sight blade is tall enough to be called a suppressor height sight, yet the gun in the Mark III version still does not support a threaded barrel, at least not from the factory as of the recording of this video. So what did they change? Well, if you take a look at it, much of the changes are cosmetic. So here we have a very rounded 90s type style. Think of the old Tauruses from the 90s cars. That's just a very rounded design. They made the new design more angular. So if you take a look at the rear of the slide, for example, where everything's kind of blended and rounded, now it's more right angles and angular. The grip itself got a retexturing, but aside from that, the angle and the thickness is the same because it accommodates the same magazine. The safety is still in the same kind of awkward spot for those of you that aren't used to using this. For existing 5.7 users, it's going to be in a familiar spot for you. But generally speaking, safeties for guns aren't forward of the firing finger, but it makes sense for military applications. Put your finger there, and when you're ready to fire, to sweep it down and go straight to the trigger. So I understand the thinking with that particular safety. Not changed. But then again, we have that very angular look going on versus the rounded look of the original design. Maintained is the 1913 rails on the underside of the dust cover. And once again, this is a polymer slide with steel inserts, and it's very lightweight. All the controls are in the same spot: your disassembly lever, your slide stop, slide release, and then your magazine release right there. So as you can see, the guns really are similar with the exception of some basic cosmetic changes and the added functionality of a red dot sight. And what do we gain for those changes? Well, we gained the ability for moisture to creep into the trigger mechanism in the slide. Perhaps not all guns have that, just this particular one does. We did pick this one up from Copper Custom. It's also interesting to note, just one of the cosmetic changes, where the front of the slide on the older 5.7s is just kind of at a right angle to the top. They've back cut this new slide and frame so it has kind of a backward angle to it. A cosmetic change for sure. But that seems to be about the extent of the changes. The trigger feels the same. The ergonomics feel the same. It just looks different. We did notice that if you take a look at the slide seems to be a little bit more bulky, at least a little bit taller than the original design, but that could just be because they've rounded the slide on the older versions and now it's more angular. I don't know. But it still is lightweight, mostly polymer, and shoots about the same. As compared to its competitors out there, the Rock and the Ruger, this handgun has the most recoil impulse. It has the most movement during firing. The Ruger is the second most mild of the three, and then the Rock has the smoothest shooting recoil impulse of all three handguns. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. So what changes, if any, took place inside of the gun? Well, we can't really know without fully disassembling everything and taking measurements of all the parts, but what we can do is take a look inside and compare it to the older Black Generation handgun that I have here. So disassembly is the same. You're going to make sure the magazine's out of the gun, check that chamber, make sure there's nothing in there. And then over on this side, you have a disassembly tab. Just pull the slide slightly to the rear, bring that tab to the rear, hold it, let that slide go home, go forward, and it'll just pop right off the frame. And so if you take a look, you take your barrel and recoil spring out. The recoil spring is captive around the barrel. And if you take a look at the slides, this is the original older Black handgun here, and then here's the new Flat Dark Earth. Looking inside, things look pretty much the same, if not identical. So much so that we're going to set the slide over here, take the barrel out of the older gun, put it in the newer gun, and then we'll take the frame of the older gun, set this on top, and look at that. Huh. I guess we'll go outside and shoot that and see if it works. I bet you it does. We can also take the barrel out of the older gun, or the newer gun, put it in the older slide, and put that on the newer frame. Look at that. Now, that's kind of cool, two-tone, huh? I don't know which one I like better. I think I kind of like this better. Wonder if they work. What I'm about to do, I don't recommend you doing, and that's taking components from an older design and putting them in a newer design without fully understanding whether or not they're 100% compatible. They certainly appear to be, and therefore I'm taking a bit of a risk here. Get the magazine in. I'm taking a bit of a risk here in firing this gun with the components swapped around. Let's see if it works. Works just fine. More components swapped around, old and new. Yeah, I don't think they changed a whole lot, if anything. So outside of the cosmetic refresh and the addition of the red dot sight to the slide, it doesn't appear that FN made a whole lot of changes to the gun. It just has a more angular look, and of course we have that RMR mounted to the slide with that concern of that gap being there, allowing access to outer debris or whatever getting into the trigger mechanism. And again, it could just be this gun. But another thing we notice with the RMR is that you'll notice that the RMR set's rather deep in the slide and the sights set rather high. We found that the sights actually, it's not even a lower 1/3 co-witness, it's almost a 50-50. The sights set really high and partially obscure your view through the RMR. So a larger, maybe taller setting red dot sight might be a little bit better choice for this particular gun because of these large suppressor height sights, even though it doesn't have a threaded barrel. So the gun is slightly more expensive. It has that cosmetic refresh going for it. Is it something that I would race out and buy if I already owned a 5.7? No, I wouldn't do that, because unless you want to put a red dot on it for some reason, there's really no reason to buy the new gun, unless you just like the looks, you just like collecting things. There's plenty of those folks out there as well. All right, guys, so that's our quick assessment of the new Mark III FN FiveseveN pistol. If you're looking for a new 5.7 pistol and you're new to the market, I would highly recommend taking a look at either the Ruger or the PSA, and no, neither one of the companies are paying me to say that. That's just what I fully believe. If you just want the military collectible version of the handgun, well, the early military guns aren't readily available, but you can buy one of the FNs and then you'll have a handgun that's used by some 40 nations, I believe, in some capacity or the other. All right, guys, if you enjoy the content we produce here at the Military Arms channel, please consider becoming part of our Patreon family. There is a link in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got that join button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash that join button, even if you're a fan of the 5.7, and support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. And last but not least, please swing by and check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 14 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.